This is a little thing right here called Gay Salute. Produced in Sweden, of course. Today we're gonna be taking a shot for Western freedoms and liberal democracies, since clearly that's the side we're on here. Doesn't mean we might have a few pointers and notes to go with it, though, so... Does anyone remember when social media was about democracy and sharing your opinion and yada yada yada, uniting people, and now it's just a big game of canceling each other out? Yeah, that's what I have to navigate with here. So just in case anyone seems confused as to what my position is as a war refugee, I just have to clarify I'm against the war. Right? Because that's really necessary, you know, in this enlightened, progressive, more developed than ever world where human brains have just shrunk to a size smaller than ever before. That's really where we see most of the diversity taking place, right? You know, the diverse size of people's brains literally becoming smaller because they're all peace-damaged pieces of shit by now. Yeah, no, sorry, I don't have critique at all here, do I? And just in case any algorithm feels like getting a bit too artistic when interpreting human beings, I suppose I have to make it so clear where I stand that there's not even any room for edginess, humor, or satirization to reflect illogical inconsistencies. You know, technology really gave us an all-time high in terms of how autistic the public conversation has become. And speaking of which, just in case anyone seems confused as to what my official position on autism is, as an Asperger-diagnosed internet comedian, I think it's completely fine to use it as a satirical term. I mean, even I find myself annoying at times, and yeah, there are superpowers that don't go recognized, but there's not really any fun in bringing that up. This isn't Asshole Awareness Month.
War is war. It ain't fucking Monopoly. God fucking damn it! You little needle dicks don't know what the fuck I'm talking about!
And just in case anyone is super confused, next week I'm gonna be doing a shaving my head for Ukraine vlog just to make sure that everyone suffers, really. Including everyone who has to watch me from there on out. So make sure you don't miss that. Now let's start off with something that really pisses me off. Now, I'm not French, not that kind of foreigner, but let me do a little something different and start off with an appetizer for this 5-course meal here. Vous êtes dans un festin de merde. Manja! But first, a quick word from the sponsor of today's video, CannabisLight.se, the finest quality CBD products in Northern Europe. EU-regulated, non-psychoactive hemp oil, as well as buds and muscle recovery cream for the athletes. No THC, 100% legal, and you get 15% off on all products if you use the code ARIBLATTE. I personally endorse this company due to the high quality of their products. I know the people involved, they're very serious, very knowledgeable, and they know what they're doing. Make this your regular CBD provider, and you'll know what you're doing as well. Let's carry on with the video. By taking a little trip down memory lane and taking a look at this old video of mine that's been blowing up lately. Ooh, got a bit meta up in here, didn't we? Well, let's see what the comments are saying. Here's a comment to give you an idea of what's been happening to the comment section on this one. Oops! I guess Putin didn't get the email that Sweden has unshaved feminists when he threatened us with military retribution the other week. Oh well, if you think it matters where the atom bombs land when atom bomb exchange happens, I guess you're not very well read on how military strategy works. An apology or sequel would be appropriate. So you want me to apologize for having an opinion? Sorry, I'm not Swedish. This age like milk. Your dick age like milk. You trend-sensitive bug chasers do this every goddamn time one of my videos ages too well against the tide of NPC-programmed public opinion. You jump in with these shit takes and make yourselves look like you were all produced in a Volvo factory. Now, what did I actually say in this video?
A nation that's ready to kick out a Swedish family to make room for migrants. A nation with a housing crisis so bad it's being considered for the Guinness Book of World Records. And yet they let people who don't even have Swedish citizenships ahead in the waiting line. And then they tell us that we shouldn't put people up against each other, because that's racist and equality is important. If Russians wanted to invade us, they could just go through the migration board like everybody else.
Yeah. That's good, isn't it? What you're completely missing here is that this aged perfectly fine, because this video is all about the problems with feminization and how far too many Swedes are simply metrosexual narcissists. Why don't you consider that a national security threat? Jokes aside, this video has nothing to actually do with Russia. My point is simply, why are you so afraid of Russia when you've successfully been ass-banging your own country for many, many, many years? It's just strange how there's absolutely no concern aimed at yourselves, while the list of just another social crisis just grows longer and longer and longer. How exactly are you gonna prove me wrong when it is the Swedish government that chose to create a police crisis, an energy crisis, a rape crisis, a hospital crisis, a housing crisis, a shooting crisis, a grenade crisis, and let's not forget the utmost shameful welfare crisis, where people are literally committing suicide because Sweden apparently doesn't have enough resources/empathy to hand out welfare to those on sick leave. Don't you think that refugees deserve something better than this? Sweden isn't even taking care of its Swedes, so is it really so smart to bring new vulnerable people into this mess? Sweden taking people in is kind of like inviting guests to an insane asylum that's being renovated without any plan. Obviously, I'm not against immigration as a concept, but equally obviously, a poorly reasoned migration policy just ends up hurting immigrants so well as Swedes in the long term. And this is a government with massive, broad support from the Swedish people who choose to trust their politicians blindly instead of learning the concept of action and consequence. I'm not saying every single Swede is like this, but it's such a widespread issue that it just can't be ignored to explain the current state of things. Russia didn't do any of this to you. Our own establishment did, while ranting and raving about how terribly racist and sexist the neo-Nazi patriarchy of Sweden is. Don't you feel like that narrative of yours has backfired horribly right about now? Anyone who's spread the complete bogus far-left myth of racist structures in Sweden just made an argument for denazification, didn't they? That's your stupidity and not mine. Unlike you, I've spent this entire time saying we need a strong and stable society with an infrastructure that doesn't slowly crumble. We need law and order and patriotism instead of virtue signaling. We need legal guns in the hands of civilians so they can protect themselves in worst case scenarios like this, and we need higher military funding instead of rose-tinted pacifism. We need border controls to differentiate real refugees from economical migrants and war criminals. We need a society where the establishment doesn't treat their own citizens as second-class citizens. That is how you protect yourself from Russia, not by competing in how many of your own countrymen you can label evil, dangerous Nazis. So don't you fucking dare call me a useful idiot when you're the one serving Sweden up on a plate, making it as unarmed and demoralized as humanly possible. Think about this. What reason do Swedes have to fight in time of war if you've spent literal decades making people believe their society is so impossibly racist and sexist and riddled with problematic structures? Who would want to defend a shameful country like that? Huh? Just look at this absurd article on screen here. Pause if my sources are going by too fast and you can't read them. This one is really insane. Talk about Stalin with a cunt. You have to trust us socialists or else we'll be suspicious and you'll be labeled a security threat. Go, go, gulag, pussy hats, go, go! While you leftists were yelling about how this evil patriarchy needs to be dismantled and calling for revolution, I was advocating social cohesion and order. A citizen nationalism of sorts where people from all over the world can unite around stable and healthy, sustainable ideas. That's what I've been saying while you were playing the blame game. So we will hold you accountable for how terribly stupid your trendy ideas are and how absolutely horrible your bullshit aged. So if you really want to get triggered, check out this oldie of mine. It's so on point that it makes me look like a prophet, not just an internet comedian. Just click the little icon right in the corner there and you will get off. So no, sadly, I haven't changed my mind on the cultural tendency Swedes have towards deluded self-importance. This is a big problem we must deal with in this country. My god, this entire time, ever since this war started, you've been trying to make this about yourself. Every time I log in on Twitter, you're terrified that you're so special, you're next. Yeah, Sweden is next. Because, you know, that makes sense to anyone who's outside of Sweden, doesn't it? Like, first Ukraine, and then Sweden. That makes sense, doesn't it? Miss National quirky girl stereotype here. So, no, I have not changed my mind on your liberalism being a mental illness. Especially after Sweden's ruling party, massively popular amongst the people, blamed their own failed energy policies on Russia. Because, you see, when renewable hippie energy brings Sweden into an energy crisis, and these morons realized that shutting down crucial nuclear power plants was a bad idea because it's making prices on food and gas skyrocket, well, they just blame it on Putin. Anything Swedish people do to their own country is usually blamed on Russia or immigrants. So this level of hysteria and sad attempts to shift responsibility is basically Swedish tradition. So why are you surprised that I'm taking every chance I can to deeply ridicule your cultural obsession with sniffing your own farts?
We're a little more progressive and ahead of the curve.
As a Slavic man, there are few things that offend me as much as pretentiousness. See, Swedish men wet their panties as soon as I open my mouth. That's been kind of my bread and butter the past decade now. So no, I have not changed my mind on how mind-liberated your political policies have been the past years, and how incompetently this country is being run with its widespread progressive misanthropy and disregard for the common man. All you've done since this video is just prove my point. It would have been so easy to prevent Sweden's problems, but political laziness and virtue signaling ruined our country so much that refugees don't even want to go to Sweden anymore, and for very good reason. A volunteer working with bringing refugees to Sweden from Poland testifies to a widespread fear amongst Ukrainian refugees whenever Sweden is brought up. One woman said she's not trying to go from one war zone to another one. A man on a bus thought he was going to Germany, but when he was informed that the bus is heading to Sweden, he demanded to get off immediately. Sadly, nobody seems to have informed this man that Germany is a liberal shithole as well, where female refugees sure aren't any safer. Other Ukrainians describe Sweden as a mafia country, worried about the massive increase in assault rapes and public shootings, and the liberal shithole media outlet that brought attention to this was naturally trying to make these refugees look as if they're brainwashed alarmists who have a completely exaggerated idea of how dangerous Sweden is. The article describes how many Swedes are trying to desperately convince these Ukrainians to go to Sweden, because apparently it's really important that these traumatized refugees become traumatized even further.
Having escaped the Russian war machine, female Ukrainian refugees are facing a new threat to their safety. Multicultural Sweden! Wait, but diversity's a strength, no? Well, not if you're one of several Ukrainian women staying at a refugee hostel in Örebro.
Hey, Örebro! Beautiful city. I've been there a lot. Yeah. Visited one of my buddies there who lives in a ghetto, and, you know, it was relatively calm compared to their other ghettos, which have been written about nationally due to their massive amounts of ISIS supporters that are threatening regular Muslims who aren't radical enough. Yeah, no, I can totally see why a bunch of refugees don't want to go to the caliphate. Sorry, I meant to say Sweden. So yeah, these female refugees that Paul talked about had to spend a whole night at an asylum house where gangs of men kept pounding on their door trying to get in to their bedrooms, where women were staying with their children. Quoting one of them, Oksana says, "They told me Sweden is a safe country, but I haven't seen it." Since then, there's only been more media article about this, with Swedes feeling absolutely offended and terrified because the world isn't worshipping them anymore, due to believing their stupid myths of Swedish superiority. Ukrainian refugees testify to what we all know already, that their Slavic Poland is a lot safer, a lot more feminist in practice with their conservatism, since they actually punish rapists instead of only importing them. Clearly, turning tolerance into some kind of religion only accomplishes traumatizing people who are already traumatized. Since you're so tolerant, you refuse to discriminate against rapists. Since you really believe every human being is worth the same, you know, it wouldn't really be that bad of an idea to discriminate. Just enough to be able to differentiate bad immigrants from good immigrants. How about that? And other than rape and shootings, Ukrainians are deeply worried of Sweden's totalitarianism, since it's well known that the social services can take your children away from you for any reason they feel like. There's no real terror like a Swedish person's whim, I'll tell you. And one of the reasons they can take your children away is that homeschooling is illegal. So if your kids don't go to our critical theory enamored teaching curriculum shit public schools, where they are brainwashed to hate white people, including their own parents, you can totally have your children taken away from you, because going to a public school is law here. So because of this, Swedish people testify to how embarrassing it is to go down there to try and recruit refugees to their cult of pagan socialism, only to fail miserably. So now Sweden is actually sending government workers down to Poland to correct misinformation by blatantly lying in refugee faces. I think what's going on here can be described as some kind of a geopolitical Stockholm syndrome. A confused attempt to desperately convince others so you can perhaps desperately convince yourself. There's certainly something creepy sad about this behavior where you constantly need to prove how globally excellent/superior you are. Consider instead that it's okay to take a break sometimes, and that maybe this country may not be very capable of offering anyone safety and comfort and welfare anymore, and maybe charity can't be defined as bringing refugees into Sweden simply so they can live in ghettos, while Sweden for some reason looks good. At that point, you just get the feeling that immigrants are political pawns. What's exceptionally perverse here is the Swedish tendency to polish a turd and have government officials downplay how serious issues can be, all on the behalf of the oh-so-sacred Sweden image. The official statement from the Migration Board with the incident of the men trying to push their way into a room with female Ukrainian refugees was downplayed as, quote, just a misunderstanding, because these groups of men thought their friends were in that room, end of quote. Right, so that's why they tried to forcefully enter a room where they saw women inside, instead of just going, oh, our bodies aren't here, so let's just go find them somewhere else. No, that's not what happened, though. What a crock of shit. Especially given the many other creep incidents that have been written about, proving that Sweden isn't too good at guaranteeing refugee safety in asylum houses. Just a few days ago, news broke that a completely different asylum house told Ukrainian women living there that they shouldn't dress provocatively, quote-unquote, by wearing a normal skirt, as that might provoke the men from other cultures who are living there as well. Hi, welcome to Sweden, the world's most equal and feminist. Up. Your skirt is looking dangerously short there. You can't dress how you want in Sweden. The sad nature is that whether or not female refugees are going to the liberal utopia of Germany or the liberal utopia of Sweden, many rapes have been reported already. But guess what? It's not just the migrants, is it? Police also had to warn the public that creepy older men were offering to take in female refugees in exchange for sexual services. So the fact that Sweden has the most incels per capita in the entire world is also something that is making this country unsafe for female refugees. The lack of Swedish testosterone is also something that can make out a danger to women for obvious reasons. The fact that there are so many Big Ed clones roaming our country, naturally produced through the Swedish culture's overabundance of soy. There's already a well-known phenomenon in Sweden called Thai geezers, referencing older Swedish men who are seeking subservient third world women. And so police are just generally concerned and patrolling the boats coming in with refugees to prevent human trafficking, of which they are already looking into numerous cases. For example, recently 2 American military were arrested for prostitution in Stockholm, with 2 of the women being fresh from Ukraine. My point is that you can both be against a tyrannical Russian warlord and against liberal Slavophobia at the same time. Such is my position that war is simply hell and makes us look really bad to the aliens that are gonna come by and blow us away just anytime soon. And it's just silly for those on a moral high horse to have a retard Olympics and who can boycott the most Russian what? We're not just seeing economical sanctions here now, but we're also seeing cultural sanctions, meaning just blatant racism. We're seeing existential sanctions here, okay? With many Western companies refusing Russian customers. Coinbase confiscated tons of people's crypto wallets. High-profile numbnuts are calling for the NHL to suspend all Russian hockey players. A Russian pianist shows are cancelled, even though he condemns the war in Ukraine. Literally no other term for this than Russophobia. The Cannes Film Festival is banning Russian artists for some reason. Sweden's former defense minister expresses a widely shared sentiment when he calls for all Russian citizens to be deported just for being Russian. What we're seeing here is ordinary Russians being targeted in a boycott as if the entire West is already in Putin's pocket, because how fucking dumb do you have to be to play into his hands this mindlessly? So it's just interesting how nobody does this against Muslims whenever their countries do a list of horrible shit so long, and I want to make this a video an hour long, maybe? And what I want to know is, how is it possible for China to put Muslims in concentration camps right now, to have arranged forced marriages, to literally breed out their Muslim population right now? How is it possible for China to be organ harvesting Buddhists and political dissidents right now, and not a single Western country is boycotting China?
One of the first people we met with was the wife of a former surgeon, and she told us, I guess this was 2006, she's now a refugee living in the United States. She told us that her husband, during the period 2001-2003, had removed the corneas from the eyes of approximately 2,000 Falun Gong practitioners. Their corneas would be removed, then they're unconscious at this point. They'd be taken into another room, and their heart, lung, all their vital organs would be removed for sale purposes.
他说你不知道我有多么痛苦，因为这些法轮功学员是活的。事情都是秘密进行的，我们医院参与的医生很多是从其他医院调过来的实习医生。这些人的器官被摘除以后，有的人就直接被丢进焚尸炉中火化，没有留下任何痕迹。
How is it possible for China to be organ harvesting Buddhists and political dissidents right now, and not a single Western country is boycotting China? Not even when the commies unleash a horrible, deadly virus all over the world. Not even over Hong Kong. Not even over Taiwan. Whether the atrocity is happening outside of China or inside of China, you fake humanitarian jizz stains never open your mouth other than to shout racist on some Chinese commies' behalf. So how is this hypocrisy even possible? As a nationalist, I'm naturally opposed to any kind of war or imperialism, since obviously my position is that nation states are to be respected. with their unique global diversity, so long as nation-states abstain from sordid power grab attempts in other people's countries. So yeah, Russia is acting super globalist right now, and everyone is disappointed for highly legitimate reasons. Speaking of which, this is water, by the way. I don't want my audience to think that their money is going to fucking drinking and degeneracy. It's going to bills and rent. So, this is water.